This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the lecture series on research methodology. I hope you like all the previous session, and today is the fourth day of our lecture series. Today's session on the topic of toxicity studies. This is going to be presented by Dr. Bharat Rathi sir. He has completed his BMS, MD and MPhil in health professional education and also done a fellowship in ethnopharmacology. At present, working as a professor and PG convener, Department of Rasastra and Vaisyakalpana in Mahatma Gandhi Ayurvedic College Hospital and Research Center, Wardha. Special area of interest in herbal drug research, new drug dosage forms, innovative teaching and learning methods. Dr. Bharat Rathi sir has 21 years total teaching experience and has 19 paper presentation in national international conference. He has 115 publications and 230 citations. He has completed 13 research projects, 3 ongoing and 1 funded project. He also wrote a book on practical handbook of Rasastra and Vaisyakalpana in Chokhamba publication. He got 7 best teacher award, DMIMS Khadiwali Award Pune and 2 best paper award. He also nominated as a member of committee to develop the syllabus of Rasastra by Central Council of Indian Medicine, New Delhi, 2020. Under his supervision, 12 PG scholar and 8 PhD scholar pursuing their degree. Now, I like to welcome Dr. Bharat Rathi sir to present today's session on the topic of toxicity studies. Welcome, sir. Please, sir, unmute.
Please wait.
So today's class we will learn about toxicology, need of the toxicity studies, then different types of toxicity studies which are related to our subject, its advantages and limitations, and with few examples of toxicity studies so that we can learn this topic effectively. It's a very severe problem of the connectivity. Slides are not moving fast. Madam,
Sir, you are not audible.
yeah, because that slides are not moving next.
Yes, sir.
That's why I couldn't. Okay, right. Uh, so Ayurvedic formulations mainly consist of natural substances, and many of Ayurvedic formulations consist of heavy metals, and some species are poisonous in nature. Mostly drugs which contain Visha drugs, Upavisha drugs, or the mineral drugs, they all are coming under the different formulations, and so to use them in a human being, it is very necessary to determine the toxicity of such Ayurvedic formulations. Drug is a single substance or a mixture of substances used for the diagnosis, treatment, mitigation, and prevention of disease, restoring, correcting, or modifying the organic functions in man or animals. Agents of these potential activities interfere with biological processes of the host or extraneous etiological agents, and hence are toxic substances. There are different other means through which the toxicity we are feeling or experiencing through the food or various food additives, pesticides, even our drinking water, or when we walk outside, the environmental conditions or various cosmetics we are facing with various toxicities. These toxic drugs pose threat to the lives of humans and animals. Approximately, if we think about the Ayurvedic formulations, approximately 6,000 formulations which contain metals, minerals, and poisonous or the Visha and Upavisha drugs. These metals shows hepatotoxicity, nephrotoxicity, neurotoxicity, hematotoxicity, or pulmonary toxicity. Various researches have also revealed that metals contained some poisonous species used in Ayurvedic formulation report toxicity cases throughout the last decade. And here are few news also which are reported in the newspapers that is really a matter of concern. One thing is very important, that dying from the disease may be unavoidable, but dying from a medicine is unacceptable every time. The safety of a new drug formulation is very important. Therefore, toxicity testing is strictly controlled and has to be performed in animals and under good laboratory guidelines. Look here, a few newspaper news which is published in the last decade, especially since 2004, regarding the heavy metal contents or any other toxicity regarding to our organs. And it becomes, though there is a case occur, only one case, but still it becomes a headline in national or international dailies. Look here, the latest news of the Giloy, that is the Guruji. You might have known and read this news that Giloy causes harm to the liver, or COVID-19 doctors caution of liver damage linked to Giloy. So the drug which we consider as a Amruta, here the modern science think that it is also harmful to the liver. And this is because for this purpose, we required to have the evidences that our drug is safe for the human being. And for this purpose, there is a strong need of conducting the toxicity studies for the Ayurvedic drugs or Ayurvedic formulations. Why there is a need of toxicity study? Increasing demand of Ayurvedic medicines globally. This is a very good news for Ayurveda. Ayurveda is gaining momentum throughout the world, and also our Ayurvedic medicines are used worldwide. Even in one survey, it is observed that about 80% population used more or less traditional medicine or alternative medicine. Another aspect regarding this is that the people's in Quite knowledge and misconception on the safety of Ayurvedic formulation may lead to the adverse effect, because it is a very misconception regarding at the part of people, at the part of physician, that Ayurvedic medicine don't have any side effects. But if we look at the various news, it becomes a need to aware about the Ayurvedic medicine as well. Ancient tools, our acharyas have explained total very thorough methods. Even they use the ancient tools, techniques and measures to prepare a good standard Ayurvedic medicines. But due to some economic benefit, Ayurvedic supplier, they make it adulteration and contamination and make the Ayurvedic product more harmful to the human being. Even for the preparation part of view, if we think, there are 9,000 pharmaceutical units in India, and many of them follow the shortcuts for the preparation of medicine, and they bring their market product in the market, and they also pose a very severe threats to the human beings. And that shortcut methods product also harm the quality of the Ayurvedic medicine. Our acharyas very rightly says, Yogad api visham tikshnam uttamam bheshajam bhavet, bheshajam cha api duryuktam tikshnam sampadyate visham, which means a drug will be harmful as that of a poison or a sharp weapon or fire or thunderbolt if it is not understood properly or if it is administered improperly. Means our acharyas were very well aware about the use of the drug, and hence they have cautioned us regarding its use, or it must be used judiciously. It emphasizes on attaining the complete knowledge of a drug prior to its administration into the living organism. One of the report is also made me cautious, and I want to state one of the report which is mentioned, World Health Organization in its annual report, it mentioned that inappropriate use of traditional medicines or practices can have a negative or dangerous effect, and that further research is needed to ascertain the efficacy and safety of several of the practices and medicinal plants used by traditional medicine system. So this report is very much essential as far as the two terms which are mentioned here, that is the inappropriate use and another one is the practices. So we must focus and we must keen which are these inappropriate practices used and which are the practices which we really need to be care of. So here we will just talk about the practices. Which are these practices related to the herbs or herbal drugs or the herbal products. Practices includes starting from the collection, even I can say from the cultivation, then collection and adulteration, authentication, abuse, adulteration, then the processing, which again includes the material used for utensils, time, energy wave, mechanization, and at the last quality assessment. So if we are very much aware and we follow strict guidelines which are mentioned in our science, that is in Sanhitas or in Ayurveda, starting from the collection to quality assessment, I think the drug will be safe. But if suppose we miss any of these, certainly the drug becomes dangerous for the human being. So these are the practices that we must follow safely. Another one is the inappropriate use. At this level, it includes dose and dispensing. Dosages, acharyas have mentioned various dosages for the various formulations. They have even given the cautions for which drug should be used at what time. Everything is mentioned. But at the physician level, if suppose we are not following these guidelines, then this is also dangerous for the human being. Few examples I would like to quote, like for example, just take a Sanjeevani Vati. Sanjeevani Vati, it's mentioned that ekama jirna gulmeshu dvesham vishuchikam pradapayit trastam sarpadashtesu chatastra sannipatite. So they have given the clear indications in what condition, how much tablet or how much dose should be given. But if you not following this, certainly it will give the adverse effect on the human being. Same is for the anupana. Same is for the another indications regarding the medication. Then duration and time, for how much duration we have to prescribe the medicine, or how much time during the day, how much time we have to consume it. So that also guideline is also given by our acharyas that we need to follow strictly. If suppose we are not following, then it gives the bad impact and show the adverse events. So these are the few facts why there is a necessity for the conduction of the toxicity studies for the Ayurvedic formulations. As rightly said, no medicine is absolutely safe for all people in all places and at all times. And hence, the toxicological data which will generate through these our toxicity studies will help and will lead to the world with acceptance. If we go back with the toxicology, history of toxicology, long back, Paracelsus, who is supposed to be the father of toxicology, according to him, all substances are poisons, and there is none which is not a poison. The right dose differentiate poison and remedy. What our Acharya Charaka has said rightly. The testing of pharmaceutical drugs in 1980, and after the thalidomide tragedy. This was the tragedy which happened in 1960, during the 1960, when this drug was administered to the pregnant ladies, and after the this drug administration, it is found that they have given the birth of shortened limbs, baby of the shortened limbs, and such more than 10,000 babies were born. And it is found that this has happened due to the toxicity of the thalidomide. And then that drug was banned, and OECD, which is an organization especially involved in this toxicity studies, especially animal studies, has brought out a strict guidelines regarding the conduction of the toxicity for the new drug. India became the member of OECD since the 1995, and since then in India also the various toxicity studies on animals started. Come to the definition of the toxicology. It is a science that involves the study of the adverse effect of the chemical, physical, or the biological agents on people, animal, and the environment. In brief, we know what is toxicology, then it is a science, or it is a study of poisons and concerned with the adverse effect of the drug. Casaret in 1960 defined it as a science that defines the limit of safety of a chemical agents for human and animal populations. So he has done various experiments in various dosages and found that various dosages are having the different impact. So he came to this conclusion that there is a relation with the dose of the drug with the human being. Before going to start our toxicity studies, what are its types, let us know few abbreviations which are very commonly used in these toxicity studies. They are LD50, that is lethal dose 50, represents the amount of test drug that can cause death in the 50% of the animals. Means if we conduct one study, and with our dose, with a prescribed dose, if the 50% animals are dying, then it is said as LD50, that is a lethal dose 50. Another one is ED50, that is the effective dose. This is exactly opposite. This is the dose which produces a desired responses in 50% of the test population, which gives the better result, significant result. So that dose is called as effective dose, that is the ED50. Then there is one another term that is NOAEL, which is known as no observed adverse effect level, dose at which no adverse effect is seen in various dosages till that maximum dose. If any adverse effect is seen, then that is called as no observed adverse effect level. There are various animal models. We will see in the next slides which are the various animal models which are used in the toxicity studies. Another term is in vitro, that is the test performed in an artificial environment outside the living organisms, means which is performed in the laboratories in the test tubes. So that is called as in vitro studies. And studies which are mostly related with the living organism, that is with the animals, all that studies are known as in vivo studies. In vivo. Now in today's this presentation, we will mainly focus on the various in vivo studies which are performed, which are considered in animals. Then there is another term, that is subacute, or sub is sometimes called as subchronic. Sub means under, considered under acute or below chronic. That is, when there is a acute study, then there is a subacute study. If there is the chronic study, then there is a subchronic study. So these are the related terms. One important abbreviation, that is ADR, a very common term. ADR, adverse drug reaction or adverse drug effect. It is a response to a medicine used in humans or animals which is noxious and unintended, including the lack of efficacy, and which occur at any dosage and can also result from overdose, misuse or abuse of the medicine. So that is the ADR. And which is another term is side effect. It is a pharmacological effect produced with therapeutic dose of the drug. Then OECD is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which specially work and promote the policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of the people around the world. And another organization is that is CPCSEA, Committee for Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiments on Animals. And specifically, these CPCSEA and OECD guidelines they have given for the maintenance of experimental animals. And whatever the study we perform, especially toxicity studies, we have to follow the guidelines mentioned by OECD and CPCSEA. So these are the two major organizations who time to time amend the laws and circulate it for the researchers who are involved in the animal studies. Now come to the topic. If we look, if we want to work on any formulation, say suppose the toxicity studies, okay, how it involves, where is having this topic, where we put this topic, that is the toxicity studies. So this is all part of our stages in a drug development. If we think about stages in the drug development, the very first stage is the discovery of a drug. But for us, it is very difficult because we are not every time involved in the discovery of the molecule of the drug, but we are searching the literary search, and we search through the literature and found any drug or the formulation on which this specific work is done or not. Because our acharyas have mentioned all these formulations in the various texts, and they are using since long back. But most of the drugs are still hidden and they have not in use. But if suppose we want to think that if we have to do the work, we have to make it pharmaceutical, analytical, and animal study, toxicity study, then it becomes a discovery for us. So we want to search the drug through the literature search. Then the next step is the preclinical research. Say suppose this preclinical research, why it is necessary? Because if suppose our drug contained poisonous drug or visha or visha drug or any mineral drug which is toxic in nature, then certainly that drug or that formulation goes for preclinical research. And this preclinical research again divided into various types, which includes bioavailability study, toxicity study, and pharmacokinetic. Means that gives us the primary idea whether the drug is safe for use in the human being or not. So we have to go through the preclinical research. Then the next step is clinical trials. If suppose any drug is found effective or safe in the animals, then that drug is recommended for the clinical trials. Then after clinical trials, if it is found safe in the human being, then it is go for the FDA approval and then go for the post-marketing surveillance or the post-marketing monitoring. So these are the various steps which are involved in the drug development, and our toxicity studies come under preclinical research. This is the list of poisonous substances or the poisonous drugs which are mentioned in the Schedule E1 of Drug and Cosmetic Act. So this also we must know. Here the various drugs, especially herbal drugs, which include all the Visha and Upavisha drugs. Then drugs from the animal origin, Shrungi-Vish, Sarpa-Vish, Vita-Vish and all other Vishas. And drugs of the mineral origin, which includes Gauri Pashan, Hartal, Manashila, Parada, Rasakarpur, Tuttha, Hingula, Sindura and Giri Sindura. So all these drugs, whether we are using individually or in the formulation, if we really want to do research or if we want to do study, so all such formulations must go under toxicity study. So this is the first criteria, कि all such drugs which are poisonous in nature, which are Visha, Upavisha Varga in nature group, and which are mineral in origin having the poisonous property, all such single drugs or formulations must undergo toxicity studies. And if from this you might have known all the scholars who are involved, PG scholars, PhD scholars who are working in Agat Tantra department, Dravya Guna department or Shastra department, especially, they must think about the toxicity studies. The same thing is also mentioned regarding the toxicology and the animal taste and the pharmacology, which is also mentioned in the Schedule Y of Drug and Cosmetic Act. So it is also very essential that we must conduct toxicity studies for drugs which are involved or which are included in Schedule E1. Here are the adverse effects. Toxicology is a science that involves the study of adverse effect of the substance on living organisms. Generally, it is adverse effects depend on two major factors. One is the route of exposure and another is the dose. Route of exposure again include whether it is given orally or it is given through inhalation or it is applied externally, that is the dermal application. Oral route, that is very common. Inhalation, especially in Ayurveda, it includes the marsha, pratimarsha or pradhaman nasya, especially nasya, through which the inhalation, through which the drug is installed, and dermal application, that is the various lep kalpas, various lep preparations, various facial packs or the cosmetic preparations and oil preparations which are specially applied externally on skin. All such preparations come under dermal route. So these are the various areas, oral route, inhalation and dermal route. All such drugs comes under a purview of toxicity studies. Then another route is that is the dose, that is duration and concentration, that also affects and shows the adverse effects. And which are the organs which are mainly targeted or affected? All the major organs, including brain, which shows the neurotoxicity, liver shows hepatotoxicity, or the drugs which especially harmful for the heart is cardiotoxic, which are harmful for the kidney are nephrotoxic, or which are harmful for the lungs, that is the pulmonary toxic. So these are the various organs which are generally attacked by these drugs, and they causes the toxicity to these various organs, which are supposed to be the marmas of our body. These are the various models. Now we will come to the various models of the toxicity studies. These are the various animals which are used. We will go again detail one by one animal models. Why? Because they are called animal models, because the animal which is specifically used for any toxicity study, that toxicity test or study is known that specific model. Rat, which is a very common animal which is used for the toxicity of developmental toxicity, carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, immunotoxicity, and neurotoxicity. Mice is another animal which is generally differ with the rats in the size. Mice generally weight in between 60 gram to 100 gram, and rat is weighing in between 300 to 600 gram. So this is a difference between the rats and mice. Mice are more used especially for the testing the carcinogenicity, skin sensitization, genotoxicity, immunotoxicity, neurotoxicity, and reproductive toxicity. Guinea pigs is another animal which is skin sensitive, and hence it is used for the skin sensitization study and cutaneous toxicity. Hamsters, again a small animal used for the carcinogenicity and genotoxicity, which is generally takes place for a longer duration. Another animals, rabbit, also used for the testing the developmental toxicity, cutaneous toxicity, and reproductive toxicity. Hen are specially used for the neurotoxicity. Dog used for carcinogenicity, cutaneous toxicity, and neurotoxicity. And in that also, especially biglies for the hounds, greyhounds, dog are used. Monkey very rarely used nowadays, but previously they were used for the developmental toxicity, cutaneous toxicity, pesticides, or they are bushly. These are the big animals, especially these dog, then monkey, sheep, goat. They are especially used to test the pesticides and medical devices and their uses. So these are the different animal models which are used for various toxicity studies, but mostly the rodents or the small animals, that is rabbit, mice, then guinea pigs, hamsters. These are the very common animals which are routinely used for conducting the various toxicity studies. Now the question is that why these animals are used for the study? What is the importance? If we look, their most important reason is their morphological effect of the drug are same in human and as in animals. This is one of the very important reasons why these animals are used for the such type of toxicity studies. Moreover, dogs and humans have the similar stomach morphology and emptying characteristics. Then pig and human colon morphology appears similar. Microbial content of the rabbit intestinal microflora is similar to that of humans. Regarding the mice, mice are used due to the short lifespan and susceptibility. So these are the various reasons why these animals are used. Another thing is that a large part of animal and human biology work in the same or in a very similar ways: breathing, digestion, and reproduction. So based on the assumption that the females are intrinsically more variable and sensitive than males, hence male and female both are taken sometimes for the study. Because male and female in a same study could reduce the statistical power because of a greater spread of pool data or similar subsamples of each sex. Due to all such various reasons, animals are most preferable for the toxicity studies. If you look at the one fact that according to the PETA, which is again involving in the animal welfare, people for the ethical treatment of animals, that is PETA, is a very well-known organization which works for the animals, reported that the National Center for Laboratory Animal Sciences in Hyderabad supplies approximately 50,000 animals to the laboratories every year and to 175 institutions in India. From this, we can guess how much potential is there and how much importance is the animal studies, or how many institutes are involved in the animal studies. Now, look, we will think about the various types of animal toxicity studies. How much types of toxicity are there? Mostly, it is divided into three major types, that is the systematic toxicity, local toxicity study, and specialized studies. Systematic again divided into four types: acute, subacute, subchronic, and chronic toxicity studies. Local toxicity studies divided into dermal and skin irritation, and specialized is divided into the organ specific, that is the developmental, genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, or single organ specific, that is the nephrotoxicity or cardiotoxicity or pulmonary toxicity studies. So these are the various types. We will go one by one and we will discuss about how these studies are conducted. Here is a acute toxicity study, which is generally conducted for 1 to 2 weeks. Maximum duration is 14 days, and here test drug is administered at a maximum dose, that is 2000 milligram per kg body weight, and effect is observed for rest of the 14 days. Means drug is only administered once for 1 day, and later rest of the 14 days the animals are observed, and their behavioral, biochemical, pathological, histological changes are investigated. So this is an acute toxicity study which is conducted for 14 days. Then there is another study, that is the acute toxicity study, which is conducted for 28 days. Test drug is administered daily at a specified time, and here rodents of 5 to 7 weeks of age are preferred. Animals are observed for their toxicity signs. The difference between acute and subacute toxicity study is that in acute toxicity only single dose is given and 14 days the animals are observed, but in subacute toxicity drug is administered daily for 28 days and the animals are observed. So this is a difference. Then come to the subchronic toxicity studies. This subchronic toxicity study is also known as a repeated dose toxicity study. Repeated dose, because again here the prescribed dose is administered to the animals continue for the 90 days. So this is a long study, long duration study, that is a 90 days, or we can say it is a 3-month study. Here also rodents and non-rodent species are used. Weekly body variation, monthly biochemical and behavioral changes or histopathological analysis is done, because this is such a long-term study, and hence periodical observation or data is noted in this study. And the last one is a chronic toxicity, which is conducted for 1 to 2 years, and specifically it is used, or this study is generally done to determine the long-term exposure of the drug which can cause AIDS or cancer. So mostly the drugs which can cause cancer, such studies are included in chronic toxicity study. Here the test drug is administered daily for 90 days and animals are observed for rest of the period. And then the animals are sacrificed for a gross pathology and histopathology and seen whether it affects or any changes which occurred in the soft organs. Now, along with these studies, the certain guidelines, these are very important. As initially we have spoken, there is guidelines which is mentioned by the OECD and SPSA, that is these are the two major institutes which generally follow the which generally gives the guidelines, and we have to follow these guidelines while conducting the toxicity studies. For the acute toxicity, there is a guideline, OECD guideline, that is 420. If we search on the Google, we will get these guidelines are available freely. Subacute toxicity, the OECD guideline 407. For acute, for chronic and subchronic toxicity, there are the guidelines, OECD guidelines, that is 408, that we have to follow. Then this is oral toxicity what we have studied. Now come to the dermal toxicity. Again, these are divided into three, that is acute dermal, then subacute dermal toxicity and subchronic dermal toxicity. And for this also different guidelines are there. For acute dermal, OECD guideline 402, subacute dermal toxicity, OECD guideline 410, subchronic dermal toxicity, OECD guideline 411. Then there is a inhalation toxicity. Again, it is divided into three: acute, then repeated dose, and subchronic. For there also we have to follow the specific guidelines, that is OECD guideline 403, OECD guideline 412, and OECD guidelines 413. There is another type, that is up and down procedure, which is a very specific one for the decision of the specific dose which is effective in animal. So we will see in detail about the up and down procedure. So for this there is a specific guideline which is mentioned, that is OECD guideline 425. So these are the various guidelines that we have to follow strictly while conducting the animal test. These are the specific guidelines which are mentioned regarding the maintenance of the animals, maintenance of the laboratories. What should be their diet, what should be their drinking water, what should be their environmental conditions, humidity. So all these are mentioned, and that we have to follow in laboratory. So these are the guidelines which are mentioned, OECD plus CPCSEA guidelines. These are also important. After study, what should be done, which test should be performed, that is also mentioned as a post animal study. What we that is also we have seen. We will see also in the next few slides what type of studies we have to conduct after the completion of the test administration or the dose administration. This is a up and down method, which is also commonly known as staircase method. Up and down method, most recommended method reduces the number of animals, especially animals are dosed sequentially at 48 hours interval. Female rodents are preferable in this method. Dose less than best estimate LD50 dose is selected and administered to the animals, and animals are observed for 48 hours. If the animals survive, then the study is continued with the higher dose. Means this study is started with the LD50 dose, that is the lower dose, and if with this dose, if animals survive, then the study is continued with the higher dose. Then if animal dies with the higher dose, then the testing is conducted with the lower dose and with another animal. So this way means we have to decide which dose is effective or which dose can cause threat or death in the animals. So that dose is noticed, and the dose below that dose can be advised for the human being. So UDP is limited to the doses up to 2000 milligram per kg, because this is the dose which is generally used in the acute toxicity testing. So this is an up and down method. Dose can be raised, dose can be down, depending on the toxicity symptoms. Then acute toxicity testing for the inhalation. It is performed for the aerosol-like preparations. In modern, there is aerosol-like preparations are used, but if we think about Ayurvedic drugs, now number of Ayurvedic aerosols are also in the market. But if we think about our few drugs which are specially used in Nasya Karma, especially Pradhamana Nasya, where the fine powder is installed in the nostrils. So that type of drugs we can think regarding their toxicity, and that drug we can choose for the animal. Animals are acclimatized to the lab conditions, and they are maintained in an airflow of 12 to 15 air changes per hour. So this is the criteria here which is mentioned. They are maintained in an airflow of 12 to 15 air changes. Air changes means what? That air spray is done, then 5 to 10 minutes break is given, and again the spray is done. So this way the air changes is done with adequate oxygen supply. The animal is exposed to the test drug for a minimum of 4 hours, and then it is monitored for 14 days. Then animal is observed for tremors, convulsions, salivation, diarrhea, lethargy, sleep, and coma. So various symptoms are observed and they are noticed. The study is performed at 4 dose levels, that is high, mid, low, and vehicle. So there are generally 4 doses, and whichever is found effective, that can be considered best. So this is the acute toxicity testing for the inhalation. There are another toxicity testings used for the topical preparations, especially eye irritation test and skin irritation test. In eye irritation test, all the preparations, especially of the ear drop or netra bindu like preparations, they are all can be tested for this. It is commonly known as Dray's eye irritancy test, where 0.5 ml of a test drug is administered to an animal's eye, and the animal is restrained for 4 hours. Redness, swelling, discharge, ulceration, or hemorrhage, and blindness are assessed and monitored for 14 days. Means here a single dose is administered, and for rest of the 14 days, animal is observed for the various symptoms, and it is noticed. Another one is Dray's skin irritancy test, especially which is useful for the all lep preparations, lepakalpas, and all the skin oil preparations which are specially used for the external application in all type of skin diseases. So all such preparations can be used, can be tested with Dray's skin irritancy test, where 0.5 gram of a test drug is applied to the surface of the animal skin during the observation period. Signs such as erythema and edema are assessed, whether with any allergic or any symptoms are seen, that is noticed, and at the end of the study the animals are sacrificed and pathological changes are evaluated. So this is a test specially which are used for the topical applications. In Ayurveda, we are having lep preparations, various oil preparations, various cosmetic preparations which are specially used for the external application. All such preparations or single drug or any formulations that can be used for this toxicity testing. This is a neurotoxicity study. Effect of a drug on the central nervous system can be studied through the neurotoxicity studies. Various drugs are there which are neurotoxic. they must be studied under this category, carried out in adult rodents. Test drug is administered for 28 days or more, and neurological dysfunction such as loss of memory or sensory defect and learning and memory dysfunctions that are evaluated. Because these symptoms vary according to the various toxicity studies, because various symptoms we have to find out and we have to monitor them throughout the study period. This is another one, that is the developmental toxicity or embryo toxicity. This is a study which specially evaluates the effect on reproductive function and ability to produce birth defects, as we have seen in thalidomide. So there are certain Ayurvedic drugs also which can directly affect or effect on the reproductive function, and this type of drugs can be tested through the developmental toxicity. So this is a model which we use, and for these rodents, especially mice and rats, are used for this purpose. The test drug is administered in between 8th and 14th day of pregnancy, and the embryo lethal effects are studied. On 21st day of study, a cesarean section is performed, and parameters such as limb malformations, then encephalopathy, cleft palate, open eyelids, tail deformities, as well as mortality and the number of dead and live pups are noted. So these are the various observations which are noted in developmental toxicity, and we can decide whether the drug is safe or not. Genetic toxicity, this is an important aspect in the toxicity studies. Certain drugs which produce the genetic abnormalities to detect the genetic damage. Genetic toxicity tests are done to identify gene mutations, chromosome changes, and alterations in the DNA sequencing. And here also rodents are preferred. Now, after knowing all these types of toxicity studies or the various scope of the toxicity studies for the Ayurvedic formulations, herewith I am presenting you two such studies which are generally taken at our institute for my PhD scholars, and how they have decided and taken this study that is presented here so that you can have a very thorough idea regarding the toxicity study. The very first study is here, the evaluation of repeated dose subchronic toxicity study of Sila Sindhu, prepared by two different methods along with its characterization. So this was the thesis topic of the PhD scholar, and which is recently DRC is done, and the Animal Ethical Committee through Animal Ethical Committee also it is passed. So here what he has to done with this PhD scholar, that this PhD scholar has to prepare the Sila Sindhu, which is prepared by two different methods. That is, the one is traditional method and another is by electric muffle furnace, right? And their toxicity, chronic toxicity study, that is the repeated dose, means it is a 90-day study, and then along with its characterizations, means its pharmaceutical preparation and its analytical study. So there are three major aspects in this study: pharmaceutical preparation with two different methods, their characterization means their analytical study, and their evaluation of repeated dose toxicity study. This is a major study. Now, how this toxicity study is planned? Now look here, how this study is planned, where this entire study is divided into the 6 groups. Group 1 is taken as a vehicle or the control group, where there is a 12 animals, 6 male and 6 female, and the duration is 90 days. Group 2 includes the experimental group, that is the low dose, that is 1 TED, that is the 1 therapeutic dose, Sila Sindhu plus honey, which is calculated here for the animal, and it is administered it will be administered with honey, 1 ml honey for 90 days. Group 3 will be an experimental group, that is the 5 TED, high therapeutic effective dose 5 times. So it will be medium dose which will be administered, and the third group will be high dose, that is the 10 TED, means 10 times of therapeutic effective dose. So it will be a 225 mg per kg body weight with honey. And group 5 will be a reversal control group. This is another group which is where the minimum dose will be given to the animal for a whole 90 days, plus the animal will be observed next 30 days for any changes in the animals. So this is called as reversal control group. Right. The same will be group 6, that is the reversal high dose group, where the high dose is given for the 90 days and the next 30 days animal will be observed. So the total duration for this study will be 120 days. That is the reversal control group, reversal high dose group. So these are the two groups added in this study. We will go with the methodology. The study will be performed as per the Oecd Guidelines 408. So these are the guidelines we have also seen in the table that for chronic or the subchronic toxicity study, Oecd Guideline 408 should be followed. The experimental group, that is 1 TED, 5 TED and 10 TED study drug containing stable vehicle, that is honey, with mentioned dose will be administered in the mixed rats. Every signs of illness, behavioral changes and reactions to the experimental group will be observed and recorded for every single albino rat. Body weight and other parameters will be observed on day 7, day 14, day 28 and 90 or in the last day for mortality, because periodical observations very essential whether a drug is having any adverse effect or any effect that is noticed during this interval observation, and other parameters like hematological parameters, biochemical values and histopathological study will be done. So this is the methodology which is followed in this synopsis. We will go with another type of study, that is a dermal toxicity study. This is another synopsis which is submitted by a PhD scholar. Title is Pharmaceutico-Analytical Standardization and Comparative Evaluation of Dermal Toxicity Profile of Aragvadadi Tail and Aragvadadi Ointment. So this is a Aragvadadi Tail is the formulation which is mentioned in Chakradatta, especially in Shvitra Chikitsa. But what is the thing is that Aragvadadi Tail contained Hartal and Manushila, and hence Aragvadadi Tail is modified into one cosmetic preparation like Aragvadadi Ointment because of the patient's purview, patient's convenience. But being it contained the Hartal and Manshi, and hence we decided to go for the dermal toxicity study. Now here dermal toxicity profile which include acute and subacute dermal toxicity study. So we will go with the two studies here. First we will go with the acute study, and then we will go with the subacute toxicity study which is conducted for 28 days. This is the grouping of the animals in this acute dermal toxicity study, where group 1, group 2, group 3. Group 2 contains Aragvadadi tail and group 3 contains Aragvadadi ointment, because acute toxicity studies always contain with a one single higher dose, that is the 2000 mg per kg, and it will be calculated for the animal according to its body weight, and then it is applied on the animal skin externally. So this is for acute dermal toxicity study. This is the methodology which is mentioned here. The rat will be monitored for the duration of 24 hours with special attention given to the first 6 hours and once daily further for a period of 14 days. This is a subacute dermal toxicity study which is generally done with 3 doses, 500, 1000 and 2000 mg, 3 doses for 28 days. because this is a difference. Acute toxicity, we just go for a single dose and observing the animals for 14 days. But in subacute toxicity, we have to apply or use the drug, continue for 28 days and observe the animals. This is a difference. So effect of the long-term effect, that purpose is here to just see the long-term effect of the drug on the skin or on external application. That is the purpose here. So here group 1, group 2 for the Aragodadite, and again group 5, group 6, group 7 for the Aragodadite ointment, and here that is the recovery phase for the oil, recovery phase for the ointment. So that is observed for another 14 days. It is applied for 28 days and observed for next 14 days. So this is the grouping of animals in subacute dermal toxicity study. This is their methodology, and here look here the guideline, OECD guideline 410 are followed for this dermal toxicity study, subacute dermal toxicity study. Dose calculation here, just I will show you how the dose is calculated. For the human dose, which is set as the 2000 milligram highest dose for 60 kg person. So standard formula is human clinical dose multiplied by the conversion factor, that is 6.2. So it comes 33.3 into 6.2, that comes the 206.66 milligram per kg. And if we calculate it for a 200 gram rat, it comes at 41.33 milligram. So this is a dose which is used in acute toxicity. For subacute, the human dose is 250 gram, suppose for that particular medicine for 60 kg person, then it comes as a 4.16. If it is multiplied with the conversion factor, then it comes 25.79, and for a rat weighing 200 gram, it comes as a 5.16 milligram. So there are the standard methods for the calculation of the dose for the animals that we have to follow. After knowing these two synopses, let us have look on few examples of the toxicity studies of an Ayurvedic formulations, see how they are conducted and whatever their observations. Here I have choose only a very few, but there are number of animal studies which have been conducted so far, but a few of them I am putting here. The very first study, that is Pokarna et al. Conducted a toxicological studies of Rasasindur and Ayurvedic formulation. What are its observations? Acute toxicity results show that Rasasindur did not produce any signs and symptoms of toxicity up to an oral dose of 200 milligram per kg in Winstar rats. In chronic study, Rasasindur 10 TED showed mild to moderate changes in kidney, liver, intestine and stomach. Means at a higher dose, it showed changes in the soft organs, because it is a chronic toxicity, because it is a 90 days, continue 90 days, and hence Rasasindur cannot be administered for a longer duration, but it must be used for a safer side with a smaller dose. Hence, it is suggested that the Rasasindur is safe for a consumption at the therapeutic dose level only, because 10 TED means 10 times therapeutic dose. It is having a moderate changes in the soft organs. Take Kumar G et al. Safety evaluation of an Ayurvedic medicine, Arogyavardhini Vati, on brain, liver, kidney in rats. Arogyavardhini Vati at a doses of 50, 250 and 500 milligram, that is 1, 5 and 10 times of human equivalent dose respectively, administered to the rats for 28 days, does not have appreciable toxicological effect on brain, liver and kidney. It means that it is safe at all doses. So that is a very good news for us. We can use this Arogyavardhini Vati even for a longer duration at all doses. Third study shows that the acute and chronic dermal toxicity study of Mahanarayan tail. So we can say that the Mahanarayan tail we are using since ages. but still it contains few drugs which may some molecules of the drug may be harmful, and hence thinking that this study was conducted even for a longer duration. But for our goodness, uh, thermal exposure to test drug anarantil during the course of acute and subchronic toxicity study. Safety of the test drug at the tested dose level was confirmed by physiological, hematological, biochemical, and pathological findings, and no abnormal behavioral activity and no terminal deaths were recorded in Winstar rats. So that is a good news. Another study, chronic toxicity study for Tamra Basma, because Tamra is considered one of the most hepatotoxic drug in Ayurveda as well as in modern science, and they are more worrying about the hepatotoxicity or especially copper or Tamra, and few articles were also published in the national or international dailies regarding this copper toxicity. But this study may be the solution or maybe the answer for them. In this study, Tamravasma was administered orally daily to different groups of albino rats in TD, that is Tamravasma, and 2TD, that is Tamravasma, twice the therapeutic dose, for 3 months. Regular for the 3 months, that is the chronic toxicity study. Tamravasma was found to be relatively safe at these dosage levels. So there was no mortality found in the animals. Thus, you can say that if the Tamravasma is prepared properly, then it may not show any toxic effects in human animals or even in humans. This was a study on Punarnava Mandur, where a toxicity study of the classical Ayurvedic formulation in Winstar rats. Study for repeated dose oral toxicity study in Winstar rats for 90 days. Punarnava Mandur at the dose of 0, 90, 450, 900 milligram per kg body weight for 90 consecutive days. Hence, the dose level 450 milligram of Punarnava Mandur was found as NOAEL, that is, no observable adverse effect level was found. It was suggested that to carry out a toxicity study at possible higher doses so as to establish the target organ of toxicity. So these were the few examples. Here, there are so many such studies are there, but due to the time constraint, I am unable to quote here. You can search Google search, you will find a number of such studies, and their methodology is given in detail. And these are the evidences that Ayurvedic herbal drugs, though they contain various minerals or various poisonous drugs, but still, if they are prepared properly with taking all cautions, they are safe for humans. Now considering the advantages of these toxicity studies. The very first advantage is that this test helps calculate no observed adverse effect level dose. This is important. The dose which is found effective in the animal, we can decide and we can think at what dose it should be administered to the human being. Therefore, toxicity study of drugs and chemicals is a scientific process necessary for discovery and development of drugs as well as identification of potential toxicants. This is most important because this is one of the steps in the drug development. And to discover the dose-response relationship of a poison, dose-response relationship, at what dose it is effective for the human being. So that is very important for conducting the toxicity studies. A chronic toxicology study provides inferences about a long-term effect of a test substance in animals, and it may be extrapolated to the human safety at the test substance. So from that study, animal study, we can decide the dose in the human being. So this is the most important, and we can also decide it whether the drug is toxic or not. But still, there are a few challenges as well in conducting these animal studies for the toxicity studies. The very first one is unethical and animal welfare point of view, because we are directly or indirectly we are sacrificing or killing the animals. So that is naturally the unethical use of animals for performing the various tests. So because the organizations which involved in the animal welfare, so they time to time they are raising this issue. Animals should not be used for these toxicity studies, being they are killed. So that is quite right for them. But considering the human safety, it is very essential to conduct the toxicity studies in animals. Another one is the requirement of skilled manpower for the teamwork. For conducting these animal studies, various toxicity studies, certainly they are required manpower, skilled manpower. For teamwork, because as we look here, being a PG or PhD scholar, along with this, we require the pathologist, we require the histopathologist or the statistician for providing or administering the drug. So all such as pharmacologists, so all such manpower is required, and by this way it is a teamwork. And moreover, we require a animal house, setup of an animal house. So special animal house setting is essential, and it is not is possible for each and every institute because it involves money as well as manpower. Moreover, it is a time-consuming protocol. If you see, if we think about only acute toxicity study, which is a 14-day study, that is quite possible. But for a 28 days or 90 days or even more than that, in especially genotoxicity or the chronic toxicity study, it takes 1 to 2 years. So it requires much patience, and that is quite difficult. So these are the few challenges which are generally we are facing while conducting these animal studies. Thus, the use of animal for the toxicity studies can be complemented, and for this purpose, it is complemented by encouraging the 3R, and these 3R are concept of 3R, which is nowadays followed, where reduction, refinement, and replacement. Reduction means we can decrease the number of animals in the animal study, and we can minimize their sacrifice or killing. Refinement use the procedure that reduce the pain in animals, and replacement use of lower species of live animals so that we can minimize the burden of animals and we can think about their safety. So this is the concept of 3R: reduction, refinement, and replacement. So concluding this session, people's inadequate knowledge and misconception on the safety of Ayurvedic formulation may lead to the adverse effect, and that really necessitates the conduction of toxicity studies. There was the need of toxicity study to be carried out in vitro or in vivo for discovery and development of drugs, as well as an identification of potential toxicants to reduce the risk in human beings. The target organ toxicity, dose response relationship, relevant human effect, and any complications arising during the treatment should be established through preclinical evaluations. Through this approach, only toxicological data of Ayurvedic formulation will help for the world with great acceptance, because we will be having the evidences then. And if we show the evidences, I think they will not dare to even raise an issue like Guruji, which is a very ridiculous for them, who can raise the issue and who are claim that the Guruji is toxic. So if we will be having the strong evidences, I think it will be a strong point for us, and we can strongly give them the evidences and for their right acceptance. I always think that conducting this animal study is like swimming, because initially we must think about the acute toxicity studies, which are just a 14-day study, because for swimmer also, when he wants to swim, he generally swim with uh, less depth area, and once he get confident, he can depth in a more depth area. So likewise, we start with the acute toxicity study, and if we gain confidence, if we collect teamwork, then we can go for the longer toxicity studies. So to summarize today's class, we have learned about the toxicology, various terms used in toxicity studies, types, then animal models, their limitations, advantages, and few examples. So with this, I take a pause. Thank you very much, organizing committee and all learned scholars. Thank you very much.
If anyone have if anyone have any query, please unmute yourself and ask. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. This was very nice and informative lecture. I just wanted to ask you how to decide a dose in subacute in 28 days oral toxicity study.
Actually, different guidelines have given the different day schedule. If you go through that schedule and that guidelines, they have given there what dose should be used. In that different guidelines, it is clearly mentioned. For subacute toxicity study, which is generally a 28-day study, it is conducted in the 3 different doses, as we have seen in the. I will show you. And for this purpose only, I show you these 2. Look here, this is a subacute dermal toxicity study. Here, the specific guideline which is used here 408, and here the 3 doses are used: 500 milligram, 1000 milligram, and 2000 milligram. And this dose is now extrapolated in the human animal, and accordingly the dose is administered. The same is for the ointment, because this style is modified into the ointment form. But again, we have also taken this ointment for whether it will be having any toxicity. So this is again tested with the 3 doses. So this way,
Okay, sir. So then,
yes, if you go through that particular guideline, it is very clearly mentioned in every guideline. So it is not a very difficult problem. You can go with this very easily.
sir, is it mandatory to do acute toxicity study before you go to for the 28 days oral toxicity study, or shall we?
Not necessary. Not necessary, but because as I have mentioned, acute toxicity only we are testing a very single dose, but in subacute toxicity study we are applying the drug continuous on 28 days, so that gives us the better results. So subacute toxicity is better than the acute one. And again, depending on our drug or formulation, how much or how long this drug is used for the patient. Say suppose any oil is there. Say suppose this Aragodari tail is here, and which is advised in Shwitra. But for Shwitra, it is generally it is known that for Shwitra we have to apply it for a longer duration. So hence we decided to go for the subacute.
Yes, sir. The same thing is with the bhasmas also. So, as per the literature, the dose will be counted and can be used for the subacute for 28 days oral toxicity study, sir.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Here, I would like to share that there are because this is not possible for every institute to have an animal house. But for your goodness, in India, there are number of such institutes or government institutes are there. That list is also with me. I will provide you the organizer so that it will be you will get it from there. There are number of such institutes are there who are conducting these animal studies, and they are giving you the results. So number of institutes are available. Yes. Any more doubt? These studies are mostly useful. The PG scholar or the PhD scholar who are specifically working in other tantra department or Trivandrum department or Shastra department, because drugs are very common in all these subjects. In other tantra, various poisonous drugs and various agadas are mentioned. In the Guna department, various drugs can do the single drug study. And in Shastra, there are n number of formulations. As I have put it, nearly 6,000 formulations are there. So you can pick up any formulation, go for the literary search for any work is done on that particular formulation, and then choose the formulation and go for the any kind of toxicity study. So this is a general way to decide or to select the drug for the study. In today's topic, I only included animal toxicity study because there are also another way that is in vitro toxicity, because that are conducted in the outside the animal body, that is the in lab or in test tubes. That studies are not included here because that is another topic we can share. I can discuss with you because again there are different types and they are again long one. Then I focus especially on the animal toxicity studies only. Yes.
There is no question further. Myself, Dr. Sundar Maharana, PG Scholar, Department of Panchakarma, Ayurveda and Unani Tibia College and Hospital. I would like to thank Dr. Bharat Rathi sir for an enlightenment of the knowledge. Today webinar was full of knowledge about the toxicity studies. And lastly, thank to all participants on behalf of Panchakarma department for their patience in listening to this webinar. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.